All right. Welcome back to Triple B, where we are Black, beautiful, and brave. I'm Candy.
And I'm Ayana, and we're glad that you've decided to join us again as we discuss topics we find the most interesting to us as Black women who are single and Christian.
Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, please do not forget to like, subscribe to our channel, and share with a friend or anyone that you know who might find these topics intriguing. Okay. So don't forget to share. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as you may have noticed, we have changed our platform, or not platform, our how you are able to view us or hear us.
Or hear us, yeah. So we have a new look. We are visual because people have been asking to see us. Not quite in person, but definitely you can see what we are, and you're going to see our facial responses and reactions to some of the things that we see as we go through our different topics.
Right.
And Candy, is it a new season? What are we calling this section? This
Chapter.
yeah, chapter, right? So we have chapters.
So, yes, we are entering into chapter 2. And in chapter 2, we want to talk about being content,
Yeah.
content in your singleness.
Hmm. Oh no, Candy, are we saying that you shouldn't bother or even think about getting married or getting being in a relationship, or like we're too old, or it's like all downhill from here for some of us?
Oh, no, never that. Not downhill to where? I don't know. But anyway, no, I think that it's more so to be okay in your
Mm-hmm.
singleness.
Mm-hmm.
There's some individuals who may feel like this is the time where they are being punished because
Yeah.
they're single,
Yeah.
because you're not in a relationship. You're having a hard time and you
Mm-hmm.
have a hard time just even to exist as a
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you may be desperately looking for partnership or for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
This chapter, we want to look at being content
Yeah.
as far as enjoying. In order to enjoy your singleness, you have to be content to
Yeah.
where God has called you to, or where God has
Mm-hmm.
placed you into
Mm-hmm.
the singleness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess we're going to talk about different aspects of singleness and being content,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What does that look like? What are the challenges? What are some issues? What brought us here, right?
Right. Right.
To our mindset and on singleness. And so this chapter, chapter 2, chapter 1 was more so we got a podcast.
And we do, and we do, and we appreciated your responses, your constant support, just tuning in, just listening. Um, do we want to give an idea of what we'll be covering, like some of the actual topics,
I mean, I
Candy?
guess we can. I already mentioned them. It's going to be
Hmm.
about being content. We're going to talk
Okay,
about
Candy's gonna be okay, right? She doesn't want to say exactly.
right,
Okay.
because we don't know what the future will hold, right? Right. So anything related to being content, what
Yeah.
actually, instead of us sharing
Mm-hmm.
our ideas of different topics, let us get some feedback. What would you like to
Right.
hear about? What are
Yeah,
some
because we
topics
kind of know
that
what we want to talk about. And, we have outlined what's going to be covered in this chapter. But yeah,
Mhm.
tell us what you think. What do you want to hear? Something that you feel that we missed that is just as important to you. Because if it's important to you, it's important to us.
Yes, about being content,
Yeah.
especially as a Black Christian woman
Yep.
who
Yeah.
who's called to be Black, beautiful, and brave.
That's
Just
right.
be
That's
brave.
right. Be
Be
brave.
brave and share. What are some topics? What are some concerns? What are some questions? What do you want to hear us to talk about? What are your opinions, or what opinions you want to hear from us? Because you know that we have opposing opinions sometimes on certain topics. So,
No, no.
oh, we do, right? Especially ending last season,
Hmm.
or the last chapter. I
Mm,
think we were talking about shooting your shot and how
yeah.
we had some different thoughts, right? But this season or this chapter, uh, I'm sure that will be relevant, but also we will have some guests to come on
Mhm.
to share their perspective because we're hearing from you. Some of you guys want to share your thoughts, share your
Yeah.
perspective or opinions about certain topics, and we're going to do just that. So in
Yeah.
the comments, definitely share with us, or if you don't want to share in the comments, connect with us individually if you know us about different topics you would love to hear us discuss right here on Black, Beautiful, and Brave. But for today,
Right.
we are going to
What?
talk about what? I'm going to
Candy, you gonna put me on the spot? I don't.
yeah, just like how you just put me on the spot. Yes.
Stop it.
Yes. Hmm.
Being celibate,
Mm.
the celibacy lie.
Mm.
Mm. Hmm.
Isn't it- the celibacy lie.
Hmm. Hmm.
Celibacy is a lie. Tell me, when you think of celibacy, or the celibacy lie, meaning there's a narrative that comes along with the idea of celibacy. We're not
Yeah.
going to take for granted that
Yeah.
everybody understands and know what we're talking about or understand the definition of celibacy, if not just celibacy, abstinence, what have you. Could you define those terms for us, Ayana?
I mean, roughly speaking, celibacy is the idea of you just not having sex, right? Preferably not having sex outside of marriage, right? So, or just not having sex at all. Um, Abstinence, of course, a similar concept. Again, not having sex, and again within this concept of marriage. For us growing up, but for me, let me talk for me, right? Because it could be different for you, for different persons. And Kenny and I kind of touched on that already. Growing up in the church, I was told, and I'm going to say I was told, or I understood as a young woman that if I remained a virgin until I got married, well, if I remained a virgin rather, if I remained a virgin, did all the right things, went to church, kept myself pure, etc., that undoubtedly at some point I will find a husband because he'll be looking for a woman who is sexually pure, who is Christian, wants to serve the Lord. And then thereafter, we will have, a happy life because we did what God wanted us to do. We got married, had our two kids, did missionary work on the field, whether it's at home or abroad, and, your life. And of course, you just be translated when Jesus comes.
Mercy. All of
Yes.
that.
Candy, does
With
that sound
marriage.
similar? Does that sound like something
Nah,
you've
I don't
heard
know
or
about
understood?
now I don't know about becoming a missionary,
Well, I
but
mean, a missionary, and not necessarily traveling, but doing whatever God has called you to do, and your part, whatever's your part with the church.
mhm. I guess what I want to make clear is celibacy is like just not having sex
Mm-hmm.
until marriage, meaning you have
Mm-hmm.
kept yourself as a virgin. If you say, some
Mm,
will say that's sexually pure,
yeah.
purity, right? That if you do that till marriage, until marriage, then you'll receive all of these good blessings,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so I did hear, I'm just trying to think, I did hear about, just being careful, not having
Mhm.
sex, saving
Mhm.
yourself till
Saving
marriage
yourself.
will
Yeah.
be a joy to your husband,
Right.
right?
Ooh, a joy to your husband. Ooh.
Mhm. A joy to your husband, by saving yourself for
Mm,
marriage.
mm,
Now, Ayana and I can only speak from a female's perspective because we were
right.
all girls. This is
Right.
what was told to us
Mhm.
as far as
Consciously and subconsciously, right? So, yes,
right.
in terms of what was presented in,
Mhm,
let's say, even in sermons, right? Or even in discussions that we've had in church about what a Christian young woman looks like, especially a
mhm,
Christian young woman who wants to get married to find a good Christian husband. I mean, she has to be in a state where she can be found, right? So she has to be found. And when she's found sexually pure, chaste. And of
mhm,
course, this is what every young, good Christian man desires.
mm. Yeah,
Young and old.
that's what they said, right? That's what they said. And so therefore, I think the second part of what we wanted to talk about is marriage the goalposts,
Mm.
right? Is that
Mhm.
what we all should be striving for, right? Celibacy lie. The celibacy lie is marriage the goalpost. So
Yeah.
with
That feels
celibacy,
like two separate topics though, Candy, right? So like,
very true. Let me bring it together. So
yes,
it's more
please.
so if you keep yourself pure till
Mhm.
marriage, nope, you'll keep yourself pure, you will receive a reward of
Of
marriage.
marriage. Of marriage. Yes. Yes. I think
Meaning,
definitely that was clearly spoken to me as a young woman. That was my understanding, right?
mhm.
Um, that if I did these things, then obviously marriage would be the reward.
Now here's a question for you, Ayana.
Mhm.
When you heard this conversation being had, you
Mhm.
may not have heard it alone, you heard it with
Mhm.
other young people as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
And some may have actually, uh, I guess, fulfill or may have felt that they fulfilled this particular path to remaining celibate until marriage, and they were married.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does celibacy, have you seen where celibacy has guaranteed a happy marriage?
No, it does not even guarantee marriage. Like being
Ooh,
celibate does not necessarily lead to marriage, right?
how do you know?
How do I know? Oh,
Okay,
nice one, Candy, though. Nice one. Nice one.
no, 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 no. This is what I mean.
Yeah.
Because we know that you were married,
Hmm.
but if someone remains celibate
Hmm.
till marriage,
Hmm.
that could mean that they could you might remain, well, I guess here's another thing. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
let me just change this up as far as what is the lie. The lie is that you will gain marriage in your youth.
Yeah. Or
You will
yeah,
gain
in your
marriage
youth, and
in
youth
your
being
youth.
defined because as you got older, they extended the age for youth. So in my mind, youth is like, let's say even 18 to 26. Because I remember
Mhm,
hearing
mhm,
when you're 18 and you hear someone is 20, you're like, oh my gosh, they're so old. Then when
mhm,
you're 20 and you hear someone is 25, oh my goodness, they're so old. Right? So
mhm,
youth, by the time I hit, let's say early 30s, youth was characterized even by the UN's definition, 18 to 35. Right? So there was still hope if you were single and you were like in your early 30s and waiting to have this fulfillment,
mhm,
to reach the goal,
mhm,
you know.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, so that was that
Yeah.
that's the philosophy.
And so I think that's what has been taught, or like you said, consciously or subconsciously, the expectation is keep myself pure until I reach my 20s or mid 20s, late 20s, and I
The
will
mid
obtain
30s.
favor in
Yeah,
marriage.
yeah. Or a blessing of marriage, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, I've known people on both sides who have done the keeping themselves celibate until marriage, and that
mm,
still ended in divorce. And I've known, and when I say people, I'm talking about females, males and females, but I'm referring to females more so. And I've also known females or women who also kept, who did not necessarily live up to that marriage, live up to the celibacy thing, and did not had sex before marriage and got married and are still married, right? So, and granted, people may argue that you have limited um, data, you didn't really do any research, but based, I can only talk from my own experiences. And of course, if you have a different experience, feel free to share that with us.
mhm,
But
mhm,
I feel as if it's almost as if people were rewarded for not, um, for having sex, essentially, for You were rewarded for having sex, and those who were not having sex did not receive that reward. And but again, that's in a context of marriage being the goal.
Right. And I think that what I've also heard is that even those who did keep themselves for marriage, once they entered into marriage, some women having a difficult time to consummate their marriage
Mm, mm,
because of the thought of the, I guess, that um, purity culture
yeah.
and how they have taught
Mm-hmm.
what it means to be celibate, to keep yourself, and
Yeah.
about sex being, I guess, being a bad thing, that you shouldn't do it, and
Mm,
you are not pleasing to God, and so
mhm.
forth. So it was tied to so many negative thoughts, to when now women who have been exposed to that notion and have kept it until marriage, and when it was time for marriage, having a difficult time,
Right.
the wife and the husband, having
Yeah.
a difficult time consummating their marriage.
Right.
And
And
so go
mhm.
ahead.
Well, and I mean, and that's understandable because remember, you'd have lived at that up to that point the majority of your life thinking that this is something you had to guard, something that you had to protect. So when it came to the time when you actually had to, you were in that position, you were trying to consummate your marriage, it's going to be a problem. And if we think about it, sex for women is not just a physical thing; it's a psychological thing, right?
Mhm.
Whereas we've understood now that for men, sex is definitely more physical. And that's why men could go from one relationship to another or one sexual relationship to another, just to be clear. And it doesn't seem to impact them, but we know it does on some level, but it doesn't seem to. But definitely for women, I mean, we can and we do emotionally cheat more than men because for us, the sex has to be, for most women, it is also psychological.
So do we believe that marriage is the goalposts?
Now,
Yeah. Is it truly the goalposts? Right. And so the thought is more so, if you keep yourself, you will then be rewarded with marriage
mhm,
versus, and evidently that has become a problem
mhm,
with this purity culture.
mhm,
Um, but what would we say would be, what do you think might be a healthier way to present this particular thought of celibacy? 'Cause I definitely can understand um, the benefits of celibacy, waiting until marriage,
mhm.
not just celibacy, but even abstinence,
Right,
right? There's definite benefits to it. But I think it's all about how it is communicated to us. So that you mentioned that you heard it from the church. How, okay, let's talk about, when did you start hearing about how important it is for you as a woman or as a young lady to keep yourself? Or even, we know that you were married
right.
and then divorce, and I'm sure it was talk about abstinence. Well, I mean, where did you hear that? Where did it come from? Who spoke it? Who said it?
Right. And I know why she's asking me this because her story is very interesting as well. So for me, again, it was conscious and I mean, like deliberate messages from the pulpit, right? Talking about women keeping themselves pure and chaste. We always say about the 10 virgins, the wise, the five that were wise and the five that were foolish. Um, and then we have from your home, right? This idea of women keeping themselves pure, keeping yourself, don't go out there and get into any situation with any males and get pregnant outside of marriage. And then we have like, even in our Sabbath school or youth classes, we would have these little sessions, sometimes breakaway sessions, which were considered radical at the time, where we would have these small groups and you'd have either educators, health educators come in to talk to you about sex and so on, or you have even within your small group where you met together and asked questions. So whether it was a group of girls together or a mixed group of males and females where you get to talk about some of these things. And then as we got older, of course, some of the older women as well would, contribute to that as well. So those messages were very clear. like
Mhm.
very clear, like as a female, if you are a female of value, if you're a woman of value. And of course, and we have the Proverbs 31 woman, and there's numerous references to, again, virgins in the Bible. So definitely was something to aspire to, right? To be a virgin, right? And to continue to be a virgin for as long as possible if you want to be chosen or selected for marriage or to achieve that goal of marriage. So Candy,
Mm.
what about you? Where did you get that message, and how was it relayed to you?
Well, definitely in a church. I
Mhm.
can recall, and I've shared this with Ayana before, probably
Mhm.
one of the first times that I can recall hearing the message is when our church was very intentional to have discussions with its young people. So this is in the 90s,
Mhm.
where maybe teen pregnancy was on the rise, right?
Mhm.
And so the conversation was more so not to have sex.
Mhm.
You had church leaders who divided girls and boys.
Mhm.
Just like I think in the 90s, that's how they had the conversation. Maybe they still have it that way now. But when you start having like sex education courses, even in the school, because I can remember hearing it in school too, they always separated the girls and the boys. And so in
Mhm.
our church, they did the same. And it was more so church leaders, our elders, who had these conversations. I remember when I was too young to participate in the conversation and I wanted to be in there. It's like, oh, what did you guys talk about? I want to hear. What did you guys, you know, probably talking about girls and boys and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I probably was under the age of 13 or 12.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but then when I became of age, like, oh, I'm part of the conversation. And so it was wonderful to be part of the conversation. One of the things I remember, a takeaway from that conversation, I remember even to this day,
Mhm.
is I guess the guys were giving away the guy code.
Mhm.
So they were
Mhm.
saying, all guys are dogs. All guys are dogs. And so you had a time where you had the elders, men elders, who were speaking to women, to girls, and there were some women in the room as well, like older
Mhm.
women, probably
Mhm.
deaconess or whatever, who were in the room as well. But these men talk about how they were dogs when they were younger. As far as a guy, as a young boy, they had a girlfriend for church, they had a girlfriend at school, they had a girlfriend that,
Mm.
in the neighborhood, they had a girlfriend, and all guys want the same thing.
Yeah. And
Young
then
guy.
I remember us having that discussion, and I asked you, is it that there's the male elders, and you said there were some women in the room, the male elders spoke to the girls, but did female elders talk to the guys
Well,
about things related?
we didn't have female elders, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know who was in the room with the guys,
Mm,
right?
mm,
I
mhm.
don't know. And that poses a different question also. Do we tell our girls one thing and tell our boys something different?
Right, right, and that's also another narrative, right? So I recently had that discussion with my own parents, like my dad, and I mean he agreed with me that we do tell guys something different. So, uh, the males in church hear stuff like, whether consciously or subconsciously, don't get a girl pregnant.
Mm,
I've never heard an emphasis on the males being virgins. I've never heard an emphasis on the man staying pure, because as he's looking for a pure, virgin, chaste wife from the church congregation, I've never heard an emphasis on him being a virgin as well on his marriage night.
mm,
Instead, there's an expectation that the man does have experience, right? So the idea is that um, well, I guess unspoken is that he's not a virgin, right? But the girl or the female, she has to be a virgin. That was very clear.
I wonder why. I guess for me, it's kind of rare to hear men
Mhm.
being virgins or keeping themselves pure. until marriage.
But
It's I
why
think
though?
it's commendable
Right.
when you find a young man maybe in his 20s who's a
Mhm.
virgin, like, "What?"
Mhm. Mhm.
Versus it's understood or it's excusable for a man not to be a virgin
But
because he was
why?
young. Because he was
Exactly.
young. He was
Exactly.
wild. He was free,
Right.
right? I don't know, is the thought because as a young man and you're going through puberty, your hormones are just wild. I don't know. I wonder, what is
Mm.
it?
Yeah, but
Um,
that doesn't excuse our leaders from having the same expectations of the males, of the boys, of the men.
but if our leaders are also men who were
Mhm.
also boys at one point and understood or understands the if you would say physical struggle
Mhm.
that boys would have, it's
Mhm.
almost like you can't stop
Right.
a burning building.
And how we know that it's a double standard and a totally hypocritical stance of the church for many, many years is when a young lady gets pregnant. So
Mm.
obviously, every time a young lady got pregnant, it was totally by immaculate conception, right?
Ah!
Totally. And obviously, the church didn't believe that. But at least in our faith, right, my Christian faith, they would seek to disfellowship that young lady if she's pregnant out of marriage, she's not married and she's pregnant, unless she gets married by some, as we would say, hook or crook at some point, she gets married before that, before everyone realizes, right? The guy would not get disfellowship from the church. And I've
Mm.
seen that in churches growing up. That was very evident. The
Wow.
girl almost always would be removed from her position at church, disfellowshipped. And we know disfellowshipping is a process, right? It doesn't mean that you're no longer loved by the church, supported by the church, but it is like a censure. But the men, I mean, I think only in my generation I've seen where the males also began receiving the same treatment.
Mhm.
But up until that time, it was the females. Like, where
Mm.
are the men?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
granted, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say for myself, what I saw was both. And
Mm,
I have seen instances where it was just the male,
mm.
especially if the woman or the young girl did not attend our church
Right. Well, I mean, if she didn't attend your church, but I've seen for me it was the opposite. It was the females.
only.
Yep. Only.
Mhm.
Even if there were males around within the faith. And let's say even if that male did not attend my congregation, but he was a member of the faith, again, wasn't happening.
Mm. Well, thank God for progress
I
or,
know.
you
And
know,
just to go back to that question you asked me, how would we treat with that differently? So again, there was also a school of thought that if you had sex outside of marriage, if you had a child out of wedlock, you committed the cardinal sin, like almost like the unforgivable sin, at least towards your church congregation and towards your parents. Huge embarrassment. We are from Caribbean households. If someone in that household did something that wasn't brings that family into disrepute, you could never disassociate yourself from that person, right?
mm,
As one person commented, like if you had a brother who ended up in prison, the rest of the community say, "Oh, that's the family with the son who went to prison." You know, they are not a good family. Look at their son, right? So your whole family is maligned, or so you, at least in a Caribbean household mentality, whatever you do represents your family.
mhm,
But what if we taught and looked at sin the way God looks at sin?
mm,
Sin is a transgression of the law, whatever form that transgression has taken. And just as God forgives sin, we can forgive sin. So for the young persons who have stepped out of line, who are no longer a virgin, who, made a mistake once, twice, three times. Instead of saying to them, and this is if they get pregnant 3 times out of marriage, right? This is not saying, or even the ones we don't know about who are still having sin and committing, having sex outside of wedlock. Instead, we say, listen, we have done this. God talks about adultery and fornication. You know, God does not condemn you, so I can't condemn you. Especially if you know that, in your heart of hearts, this is your struggle, this is your weakness, and you can ask God to restore you like you were before, right?
Mm.
What if we approach and teach, provide instruction for sex, celibacy, abstinence from that perspective rather than from the perspective of when you commit sexual sin, it's like the worst sin ever. And even at this point, we have not even touched the sins related to homosexuality and lesbianism. We haven't even touched that. We're just talking about heterosexual relationships.
Mm. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. What if, you know? What ifs? Those are very some good points. I think we may have a different outcome.
Mm,
We
mm,
may have a different outcome. I just think that what has happened is that maybe and I was speaking to someone about this earlier, we as Christian homes have not showed marriage in a fulfilling place. Like
mm.
that it's a good thing, it can be great.
Right,
Outside of just the privilege of having sex,
right,
how do we make marriage beautiful for all to see?
right,
So that even in my marriage, it's not more so I can have sex. It's
right,
more so for X, Y, and Z, and it could look
right,
great.
right.
We may have difficulties, we may have struggles, but this is how we fix it, and then
Mhm.
it's good again, right?
Right.
And the thing is that people who see our marriage are those who are closest to us,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
children,
Yeah. Yeah.
our
Yeah.
children. And so when they see marriage look a certain way, I think that they see the truth. They're like, please, marriage is not all that it's caught up to be. Mind you, I still have these raging hormones, right? I have a sense of void that I'm looking to fulfill. And
Right.
maybe having sex with this young man or this young woman would fulfill this particular void.
Right.
But what if we did marriage differently and
Right.
we were transparent in
Right.
our relationships to show the struggles, the good time, the hard time as we're working through it so that young people can see, our children can see, those children
Mhm.
around us can see, to know that how much work you have to put into it.
Yeah. So it's the ideal, but the enemy tries to disrupt anything that's good. And because a lot of the marriages that we have been started on these shaky premises. And again, having sex before marriage. Like I said, some of the marriages that are still together, people who are having sex before marriage, even though you're in church. So imagine you now trying to explain to a young person the joys of marriage, and they ask you stuff. So did you wait? Were you a virgin when you got married? So you're like,
Mm,
okay,
how do I
what do I
answer?
tell them? Right.
The truth. Tell them the
Right.
truth.
So you don't tell the truth,
I don't
and then
know why.
everything else gets muddled, right? So then when you tell them some truth but not the whole truth, and
Mm,
the devil just keeps us in this loop where, because you haven't told the truth, it's hard for you to talk about the good and the bad in a way that young people find genuine.
right.
So instead, most people lean towards the good, right? Because you want to kind of cover. And it's just one example. Of course, not everyone is like that. You just want to kind of show that even though you started off on a basis by not following exactly God's commands, but look at you now. You're doing great, you know. But I always tell people, having been married and divorced, I can look at couples and tell the ones that are truly in good positions and those that are not. And not
Mm,
from a place of judgment, really, but from a place of, been there, done that. And there's some things that are unnecessary. God doesn't ask us to pretend that all is well, right?
mm,
But He does ask us to lean on Him for strength and wisdom when we are going through trials, and to be able to show others that He is able, not ourselves able to fix our marriage and relationships, but He is able to fix it.
absolutely. I can recall there are times where I have shared, or I felt comfortable enough to be transparent with a young person and share my experience, right?
Mhm,
Where I
mhm,
was asked the question and I had to be
mhm,
upfront and to
mhm,
share. And I was honest, that
mhm,
unfortunately I did not wait. And I
mhm.
would say unfortunately, and that the fact that I wish I
Yeah.
waited,
Yeah.
and meaning I would be a 40-year-old plus virgin, right?
And I know 50-year-old plus virgins,
Right, and
right?
so
Female though, female.
but the thing is, all right, this is to switch it up, but when you think of virgins, the only sexy virgins are the 20-year-olds,
So you're
right?
saying everybody, the 30-year-old virgins are not desirable.
No,
Yeah.
30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old. When you
Mhm.
speak to men who have, you know, may have been there, done that.
Mhm.
Now, granted, I may not be talking or speaking about the upright Christian man. I'm just
Mhm.
the average man who might be in a church.
Yeah.
They don't care about marrying a virgin, you
Right.
know. I've
And guess
heard
what?
some
Go ahead. Go ahead, Candy.
I was gonna say
Sorry.
I've heard some say that's too much work. That's
Yeah.
too much work, you know.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately, but I'm sure an upstanding Christian man probably would not mind, and I'm sure those
Mhm.
men don't stick around too long, right?
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
they get married quick, and that yeah, and I shared my stance, and oh yeah, I was just saying I don't think that's what is desirable.
Right. And guess what? That's okay. If that's not what you desire, then fine. Walk away. Keep it moving.
Yep.
Because as you said, there may be other men who are interested. But instead, what happens is,
Hmm.
right? For the men who you do meet and they hear you're a virgin at 40, 50, they're like, huh, a lot of trouble. But guess what? I want to be the first, right? Like,
Hmm.
come on, you know?
Wow.
And again, in a discussion, a recent discussion, I was talking about, we are talking about Adam and Eve, and the fact that, we have traditionally blamed Adam for where we are today, because God did lay the responsibility on Adam, because unlike Eve, Eve was deceived, Adam was not. But on the flip side, Adam could also say he loved this woman so much, which is the kind of love a lot of women say that we want, right? We want someone to love us like a wow kind of love and would do anything for us, which is what essentially what Adam did for Eve, right? He was like saying, I'm gonna die with this woman, you
Mhm.
know. Um, but again, men have, just going to the point I was making, God does place a huge responsibility on men. And I feel a lot of times in these relationships, the woman may end up being deceived, whereas the man clearly
Mhm.
knows what he's about,
Mm. Mm.
even if you're a 40 or 50-year-old virgin.
Wow. 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 So I guess the point is more so you got to be prayerful, even if
Yeah.
you're celibate.
Yeah.
Does not promise a great marriage
No,
or that you will be married.
no. He
You know.
promised that he'd be a great God because Jesus was celibate, right? He
Mm.
promised that he would be a great God and a great provider. And granted, we have all these pat answers that people say, and they have all these singles conferences, and we have all these cute things, too blessed to be stressed, and talks about things. I don't know the ones directly related to singles, but I know I've heard some cute stuff on whatever. But if that's your heart's desire, then you have to lay that before God. And if God means for that to be fulfilled, it will. And recently I met a couple who were just married for a year. The woman looks at least 75. The man looks at least 80. Right.
Okay, this is not a young couple.
Now, granted, I'm sure both of them were married before. I know the woman at least has a big son, but come on. right? Now, our issue is the timing, right? Because you don't want to wait until you're like 75. But guess what? What if you were married at 20 and you're married from 20 to age 60? And those were 40 years of 40 really tough years because you didn't know yourself.
Mhm.
You didn't know the person. You didn't know your relationship with God. That person did not have a relationship with God versus you meeting someone at 50 and having another 20 years, 20 years of marriage. But again, this is 20 years of someone who knows you, someone who knows the Lord, someone who treats you and values you every day, is excited to see you, is excited to worship with you. And granted, you would say your friend got 40 years, but someone else would look at your 20-year marriage and be like, wow, I want what Candy has.
Mm,
And it would be
mm.
genuine.
Right,
It
right,
really want.
right, right. See, those are different conversations than
Mhm,
the conversation that is being had with young
mhm,
people, or
mhm,
we don't know what they're having now, but what we've experienced, right?
mhm,
Put it
mhm.
into perspective, put it into context of what is realistically happening,
Right.
as far as this talk about celibacy or even
Mhm.
abstinence, right?
Right.
What are the
Right.
joys and what are the sadness of it? And listen, the reality of it,
Mhm.
75?
75,
80?
girl. 75. And they look very happy, well put together. The lady was on point. The
Yes.
older gentleman was on point. They're driving their fancy car. Listen, I don't know. All I know is that for us when you're younger, and again, I'm older now, you're younger than I, you feel like the time is taking away so much of your life. But what if the time is adding to your life? You could have been married at 30 or 40, but knowing your personality, you need someone who, and God is saying, talking to myself too, you need someone who can really help you be the best that you can be.
Mm. Someone
Yeah.
who can add value, who can
Mm-hmm.
add, not take away.
Not take away.
Yeah.
Like right now, as single people, I tell people I enjoy going to bed and just laying down and not having to think about necessarily having a conversation. What if I don't want to take a shower before I go to bed? Like, like some things that are just, I'm okay. I'm okay. You know,
Mm.
um, so there's a beauty for every stage of your life. But
Correct.
just going back to this whole celibacy lie, God does want us to be celibate. He does want us to be pure, especially for those of us who are at that stage. But at the same time, know that if you, for some reason, you fall from that standard, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end. God's grace can cover a multitude of sins,
Isn't
you
that
know?
a beautiful thing? That is definitely beautiful. That's to say that just because you have not followed that prescription
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're doomed for life. Now, life
Yeah.
will shift and
Yeah.
change for you, right?
Mhm.
Now you may end up developing an appetite,
Mhm.
right? And so those are some of the dangers of having sex before
Mhm.
that time. And so there are some struggles. And I think that we have to be able to be realistic, share what are those struggles to be
Mhm.
able to, if you are able to identify, then you can probably find a way to fight them,
Yeah.
right? How
Yeah.
to resolve them, how to find support. I just don't think that we as in the church are we honest, are we transparent and willing to share with others
Mhm.
what we are struggling with so that we can
Right.
find community and find support in that. And the
Right.
conversation should be on both ends, not
Right.
just for women. It should also be for men as well. How
Yeah.
do we combat, which is really true. We are
Mhm.
physical beings, right? We have biology. We a biology law or science that we follow. We have hormones. But we also have a great God.
We do. We have a faithful God. And especially for someone out there who is thinking, well, you've done some things, and especially as a woman, because we beat ourselves up more than the men.
Mhm.
Not that the men don't do it too, but I think as women, because of the expectations placed upon us,
Mhm.
right? We kind of feel that at that point, if you've had sex like 10, 20, 100 times, that you don't deserve someone who is, you know, a good person, or someone who is a virgin, or someone who is considered a quote unquote good man. But,
Mhm.
you know, again, we can't believe the lies of the enemy, because God said his grace is sufficient for us.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, Ayana, I think you said it well. God's love is sufficient for us.
Mhm.
And you brought us home real well. I know this episode was our first episode of chapter 2, being content.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're talking about being content in our singleness. And in this
Mhm.
case, also being able to be content, to be truthful and transparent about our
Mhm.
story, about celibacy or abstinency or
Yeah.
being abstinent.
Yeah.
And so, we wanna thank you for joining us. What would we
Thank
like for people
you.
what would we like people to do in the comment section? What do you want to hear, Ayana?
Oh, I want to hear what do you think about, what we discussed or started discussing, and then what do you want to hear from us? Because we can talk about many things, and Kenya and I are going to be as transparent as possible without being, um, we do not have to be rude, crude, disrespectful to anyone, present or a past, but we
Mm.
can tell the truth, with God's grace.
Yeah. So definitely find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and even IG as well. We're going to get that
Yay.
page going again. Find us there. Let's start the conversation about celibacy or
Mm,
abstinence. You know,
yeah.
what are we doing? What are you doing as far
Mhm,
as keeping yourself, um, I guess, in the will of God, right? In God's
mhm,
will and what
mhm,
we know is ideal. And it's a
mhm,
struggle. It is.
mhm,
But
mhm,
what are we doing and what hindered you from doing so? So definitely
mhm.
whatever you want to hear us talk about, put it in the comment section. So right here below, you can see our little banner uh-huh, of where you can find us and so forth. So I look forward to having this conversation with you during this chapter, Ayana.
Yes, we do multiple conversations, and we're just so glad to be here. And
Yeah,
thank you for all your support.
not a problem. And we are Triple B.